Service will begin shortly. We will be reading local news from around the Southwest Missouri area, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on YouTube, KSMU, and on the Audio Reader Network at Kansas University. For more information, please visit us at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. Please stay tuned as our broadcast will start soon. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel now. At Blind Community Thrift Store on YouTube, and more info about this radio reading service, Navalins, and the Blind Community Thrift Store at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. The Blind Community Thrift Store radio reading service will begin shortly. We will be reading local news from around the Southwest Missouri area, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on YouTube, KSMU, and on the Audio Reader Network at Kansas University. For more information, please visit us at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. Please stay tuned as our broadcast will start soon. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel now. At Blind Community Thrift Store on YouTube, and more info about this radio reading service, Navalins, and the Blind Community Thrift Store at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. The Blind Community Thrift Store radio reading service will begin shortly. We will be reading local news from around the Southwest Missouri area, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on YouTube, KSMU, and on the Audio Reader Network at Kansas University. For more information, please visit us at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. Please stay tuned as our broadcast will start soon. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel now. At Blind Community Thrift Store on YouTube, and more info about this radio reading service, Navalins, and the Blind Community Thrift Store at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. The Blind Community Thrift Store radio reading service will begin shortly. We will be reading local news from around the Southwest Missouri area, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on YouTube, KSMU, and on the Audio Reader Network at Kansas University. For more information, please visit us at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. Please stay tuned as our broadcast will start soon. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel now. At Blind Community Thrift Store on YouTube, and more info about this radio reading service, Navalins, and the Blind Community Thrift Store at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. The Blind Community Thrift Store radio reading service will begin shortly. We will be reading local news from around the Southwest Missouri area, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on YouTube, KSMU, and on the Audio Reader Network at Kansas University. For more information, please visit us at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. Please stay tuned as our broadcast will start soon. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel now. At Blind Community Thrift Store on YouTube, and more info about this radio reading service, Navalins, and the Blind Community Thrift Store at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. The Blind Community Thrift Store radio reading service will begin shortly. We will be reading local.
Oh dear, okay. I was thinking I needed to start a minute before, but no, that's at the end.
It might just be you, unfortunately.
We're fine. I can talk for 2 hours, no problem.
The time is 10 a.m.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in to the Blind Community Thrift Store radio reading service. My name is Pat, and I'm currently here alone. We'll see if somebody else shows up. We invite you to listen to our broadcast both live and on demand. Our live sessions are available on the Blind Community Thrift Store YouTube channel, Monday through Friday, between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. each week. Additionally, you can access on-demand content through the Audio Reader Network, which offers a wide range of audio materials for the visually impaired community. To explore content from the Audio Reader Network, please visit www.reader.ku.edu. The site provides details about accessing content via Amazon Alexa, Audio Reader Network mobile app, and information on receiving a radio to listen to the broadcast by KSMU Radio. All broadcasts are played over KSMU's subcarrier airwaves at 67 kilohertz on 91.1 from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Contact Audio Reader Network for information on receiving a pre-programmed radio. Lots of news this morning. It's a Monday. It's the end of the month, and we'll just get through this. First off, out of the Springfield News-Leader, Mercy Hospital Springfield Memorial honors organ donors and their families. Mercy Hospital Springfield has unveiled a new memorial to honor organ donors. The memorial, which was formally introduced June 18th, was the idea of Marla Housley, an advanced clinical nurse educator at Mercy Hospital Springfield. Housley has seen the impact of organ donation and has met families of patients who gave the gift of life in their final moments. She wanted to create a way to honor donors that extended beyond the ceremonial honor walk, according to a community announcement. The Honor Walk, also known as a Hero Walk, involves hospital caregivers forming a procession as an organ donor is transported. Housley's vision for the memorial was to create a place of dignity, beauty, and enduring gratitude for donors. I felt called to create this memorial, Housley said, during the unveiling event. According to the announcement, donors deserve a place of dignity, beauty, and enduring gratitude. The Mid-America Transplant Foundation provided the funds for the memorial through Mercy Health Foundation Springfield. The foundation reminded attendees that at the unveiling that each organ donor can have a profound impact on countless other patients, according to the announcement. Thousands of keys saves. Last year, 28 organ donors at Mercy Hospital Springfield gave the gift of life through 91 life-saving organ transplants. An additional 8,700 lives were healed through 116 tissue and cornea donors, according to the announcement. The mural features a video screen to recognize tissue and cornea donors, along with a treescape with 3 components, each representing a different group of organ donors. The butterflies honor children whose brief lives touched others, while the leaves pay tribute to Mercy patients. The rocks at the bottom of the mural honor Mercy caregivers. Each butterfly, leaf, and rock carries a name and a date, Housley says in the announcement. They're an anchor of a memory. A reminder behind every transplant is a family, a story, a legacy of generosity that cannot be measured. The memorial serves as a place where families and friends can remember their loved ones, where hospital staff can reflect on the impact of an organ donation. This article was submitted by Janice Reeser to the Springfield News-Leader this morning at 3:48 a.m. Also from the Springfield News-Leader by Janice Reeser, Springfield's Midtown 4th of July Parade will be returning for its 35th year this year. The Midtown Neighborhood Association will host its 35th annual old-fashioned 4th of July Parade and celebration from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on July 4th, according to a community announcement. The theme for this year's event is 250 Years Young, celebrating the birth of the USA. The parade will feature a variety of entries, including antique cars and trucks, scout troops, floats, and decorated vehicles. The parade will begin at the intersection of Central Street and Drury Lane, head west on Central to Benton Avenue, then north on Benton. It will then turn east on Calhoun, north on Washington Avenue, cross Division Street, and end at Locust Street and historic Washington Park, where the celebration will continue. The Grand Marshal for this year's parade is Dr. Lori Elliott, principal of Boyd Elementary School. The park celebration follows the parade and runs from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., according to the announcement. Alberta Smith and her daughter Aubrey will open the park program by singing the national anthem. Attendees can enjoy music, free water, and ice cream from the Springfield Police Cold Patrol. There will also be free children's games and a DNA barbecue food truck offering a special for purchase along with its barbecue favorites. Prizes will be awarded in several categories, including Best Overall, Best Theme Interpretation, Best Children's Float, Best Children's Marching Unit, Best Adult Float, and Best Adult Marching Unit. Registration is open for parade entries. Parade slots are available for $10 for individuals and $25 for business entries, and $50 for political entries. Veteran and neighborhood groups can participate for free. Politicians who prefer not to be in the parade but want a table at the park may do so for a $50 fee. Pets are allowed to ride in or on vehicles only. For information, send an email to the MNA board@midtown.sgf@gmail.com or leave a phone message at 417-501-9732. For updates, visit facebook.com/MidtownSGF. A local filmmaker, Dusty Dale Barker, got a nostalgic feeling when he discovered a Kodak 8mm film in his grandfather's box while helping his parents move from Lebanon, Missouri to Springfield in fall of 2022. He digitized the film and found a 4-minute reel showing his family living on a Lebanon-based farm in 1959. There he found his mother as a little girl and his grandparents much younger than he had ever seen them. It was instant inspiration for his next project, combining it with 1990s family footage to create a 6-minute short film called Marigold. The project is a reminder to himself and to others to always live in the moment and hold on to those memories worth sharing down the road. What scares me is simple. I might be the last one who remembers, Barker said during his narration of the film. And if I stay quiet, these stories will disappear. And if you stay quiet, your stories will too. Barker, a Missouri native and a University of Missouri class of 2008 graduate, who now lives in Nashville, Tennessee, has made more than 200 projects throughout his film career. Some of these projects include diving into music videos for several country music artists. However, this was the first documentary and 8th short film he's made in his career. In August of 2025, while visiting college friends in Seattle during former Mariners star Ichiro Suzuki's Jersey retirement weekend, Barker thought of the name Marigold for the short film that stuck with him. The title refers to Marigold Drive, the road that led up to the farmhouse. He believes it captures the spirit of the film. Most films take Barker at least 6 months to produce. This passion piece only took him 2.5 weeks to create. It's just moments of time that people absolutely lived in and enjoyed, and I like that, he said. There is a stillness, how remarkable that period of time was. It's hard to not be nostalgic about it. Once the documentary was completed, Barker showed it to his mother and sister. He never told his family about the plans to make the film because he wanted it to be a surprise. Not only was it a surprise, but they were both emotional upon watching it. Documentaries, they tug at your heartstrings, Barker said. That's kind of what they do, and a lot of emotion comes from documentaries. Sad and happy and joyful and everything you can imagine. The project debuted last January with the Dances with Films Festival in New York, followed by its West Coast premiere at the TCL Chinese Theater in Los Angeles on June 23rd, 2 days ahead of his 40th birthday. The discovery of the film makes Barker wonder about all the other moments in his family that weren't captured. Not just the big moments, but the little ones that tend to go unnoticed. I wanted to make something that was universal to everyone that they could relate to, Barker said, and try and get the point across that these stories that we have, it's easy that we have phones in our pockets now, and it's easy to take that for granted. To me, it's one of the most precious things I have. It's just them being normal people living their lives. And I think that's something to start to be mindful of as we go through our lives. Again, this was submitted to Springfield News-Leader by Chris Meglio. Out of Ozark First, a nonprofit and businesses working to support those impacted by the Venezuelan earthquakes. The death toll and number of injuries in Venezuela continue to climb. The South American country suffered 2 massive earthquakes this week, leaving many people to recover from the natural disasters. Luis Silveran owns Caracas House and moved from Venezuela in 2016. I was here working when it happened, and we didn't have much information. 30 minutes after that, we started to see all the videos, all the buildings, and all the people screaming and crying in the streets, Silveran said. It's like the first 2 or 3 hours were the worst hours in like that last 20 years of many people. Silveran says he was able to get a hold of his family and friends in Venezuela after the earthquake. This is something that has never happened to us to this magnitude. Maybe 6 years ago, but nothing like this. For people who are like us, who are in another country as far away, it's hard because we don't have anything else to do except pray, Silveran said. Wednesday, we go back into contact and make sure everybody's fine, but there's still a lot of people have been waiting to talk to their families, members, and friends, and they don't have any answers. Help is already on its way from the Ozarks. Springfield-based Convoy of Hope already has boots on the ground. We were alerted in very minutes after the disaster. 2 very high magnitude earthquakes happening within minutes of each other. It's unheard of, Ethan Forhetz said. Convoy of Hope is already delivering meals. We have food trucks there, and we were able to mobilize very, very quickly to begin to get the help to the people who right now desperately need it. He said response crews are preparing for the long haul. With 2 earthquakes of this magnitude causing this much damage, it's going to be a very long-term response for Convoy of Hope. We are committed to being there for the long term and helping people as long as we can, Forhet said. We just pray for the survivors, for the people injured, and for the people who are still under the buildings. We hope they can find a way to get out, Silveran said. Silveran is also taking action to support Venezuelan people and hosted a supply drive on Saturday, June 27th at Caracas House. For more information, contact 417-861-1466. That was from Ozarks First. With our 4th of July coming up, and this is the 250th 4th of July celebration, animal experts share 4th of July safety tips to keep pets from going missing. We know that with fireworks, this is a very, very trying time for pets. With the 4th of July just days away, animal experts are encouraging pet owners to prepare now for fireworks, which can cause frightened pets to run away from home. Local animal advocates say taking a few simple precautions before the celebrations begin can help keep pets safe and improve the chances that they'll be reunited with their owners if they get loose. The Humane Society of Southwest Missouri recommends keeping anxious pets indoors, especially during the evening hours when fireworks are most common. Experts also encourage owners to make sure pets have proper identification, including updated microchip information and collars with current contact information. Keeping ID tags, making sure that your information and your microchip is current and up to date, said Annie Burke, Adoption Center Manager. I think it's very easy to just write your name and your phone number on your collar. So if they get loose, it's really obvious that somebody is wanting you back right now. Burke said these simple steps can make a significant difference if a pet becomes frightened and escapes. She said animals that arrive at shelters without identification often have fewer options, especially as many shelters continue operating at or near capacity. The animals are terrified when they come here, Burke said. If they don't have a microchip, they're not wearing a collar with their phone number on it, they have nowhere to go. All of our shelters are full. That literally means no option except for your pet to go back out on the street. Some pet owners say they've developed routines to keep their animals calm during fireworks. Springfield resident Wayne Bader said his 16-year-old dog has never liked loud noises, so he keeps her indoors until the fireworks end. When she hears them, she's inside hiding, Bader said. She's 16 years old, so it's just routine now. She'll stay in the corner and lie there. As long as she's inside, she's not bothered. Humane Society says the days surrounding the 4th of July typically bring an increase in reports of lost pets on social media and at local shelters. Animal experts encourage owners to prepare ahead of time by ensuring pets have identification, keeping them indoors, and providing a safe, quiet place where they can remain calm throughout the holiday. From 417, we review Ebbets Field return to Springfield. It's not every day that you get to celebrate the return of a beloved business. So the very moment Ebbets Field reopened its door, I cleared my schedule and headed there for a Friday lunch to kick off my weekend and some nostalgia with a good burger. Just to paint the picture for you, I intentionally arrived very hungry so I'd have room to indulge. So you can imagine my disappointment when I walked in and the hostess broke the news that they weren't serving food because of a power outage. I gave them my number so they could tell me when it came back on, and I got the good news just minutes before I made it home. Talk about an emotional roller coaster. But that's just how things seem to go with Ebbets Field. I, like most 417 land, was so sad to see this long-standing business close in January 2024. Here we are 2.5 years later, and we're all rejoicing in its return. New owners, Jared and Sydney Davis, are the young husband and wife duo who bought this long-standing gem back to life. The couple both worked at Ebbets Field when they were in college, so they have always had a soft spot for the original menu, the menu before it was revamped in 2022, and they knew they wanted to keep it similar. For this review, I knew I wanted to go the classic route and get a burger with fries. I went with Da Bum, which features cheddar cheese, and it was everything you could want from a smash burger. It wasn't too greasy at all, and it left me with the most content feeling. The fries were also cooked exactly how I like them, not too soggy, not too crispy. To quote Goldilocks, everything was just right. I'm not normally someone who drinks in the middle of the weekday, so I initially didn't order a beer to go with my meal. But just a few bites into the perfectly salty burger, I immediately regretted my decision. So in the spirit of reliving my college days, I ordered a Blue Moon. Not surprisingly, the pairing was 10 out of 10. Fans of the original menu will be happy to know that many of the classics are back, like the chicken sandwiches served with provolone cheese and your rub of choice. I also love that they're serving slices of cake from St. Michael's Restaurant and Catering. Fun fact, Nick Russo, who owns St. Michael's with his wife Jenny, founded Ebbets Field in 1981. When I finished my meal, I took one last glance around, and I noticed 417 landers of all ages enjoying their meals. I saw current college students presumably checking the place out for the first time, seasoned business professionals enjoying a meal with clients, and even young parents eating with their baby. When I spoke with Sydney, she told me she wanted this new era for Ebbets Field to be for everyone. It's obvious she's already achieving that goal. Ebbets Field is at 1027 East Walnut in Springfield. Instagram is Ebbets_Field, Ebbets_Field. And Sunday through Thursday, they're open 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. Friday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. And their phone number is 417-537-5336. Now, this was submitted by Tessa Cooper to the 417 magazine as a review on a new return of a popular dining place. This came out just this morning. Fire at Lake of the Ozarks destroys dock and boats. Morgan County, Missouri, a large fire that broke out at Lake of the Ozarks destroyed a dock and its boats early Sunday morning. The Missouri State Highway Patrol says the fire occurred in Dry Branch Cove at mile marker 4 of the Lake of the Ozarks along Ontario Road, south of Rocky Mount, Missouri. The Lake of the Ozark Fire Protection District and Rocky Mount Fire Protection District also responded to the fire. Sergeant Kyle Green, MSHP Troop F, Public Information Officer, says the dock was destroyed as well as 2 boats and 2 other personal watercraft. The cause of the fire is currently under investigation at this time. Also, out of the Ozark first, a car crashes into a tree, killing a woman in Phelps County. This was submitted this morning at 7:57. A woman is dead and a driver is seriously injured after a car struck a tree in Phelps County on Sunday, June 28th. The Doolittle Rural Fire Protection District says that at approximately 2:39 p.m., its units responded to a vehicle crash in the 21,000 block of Highway J, where an occupant was reported to be unconscious and unresponsive. According to the crash report from the Missouri State Highway Patrol, MSHP, a 2005 Toyota Camry traveled off the right side of Highway J and overcorrected. The Toyota then traveled off the left side of the road. The vehicle overcorrected again and traveled off the right side of the road, crashing into a fence and tree. An occupant said in the Toyota, a 29-year-old woman from Rolla, was pronounced dead at the scene by the Phelps County coroner. The driver was seriously injured and taken by ambulance to Phelps County Hospital for treatment. This is the 13th motor vehicle fatality in MSHP Troop I in 2026. This again from Ozarks First. From the Springfield News-Leader, Missouri parent group organizes with school funding concerns. This is after reading, and this has to do with the August 4th election. A proposed Missouri constitutional amendment would allow lawmakers to replace state income tax with higher sales tax. Opponents, including a parent coalition, fear the change would drastically cut public school funding. The amendment has sparked a statewide debate pitting tax reform advocates against public education supporters. Sarah Laub tried everything to get her son with learning disabilities a better education. She drove him to a private school an hour and a half away from home in rural Missouri before being directed to the local public school. When he continued to struggle, she tried homeschooling. The local school district in Stockton, a town with a population under 2,000, just couldn't provide everything her son needed, despite teachers' best efforts. They really did not have the funds to provide him with everything he needed, and he really, really struggled, Laub told The Independent. As her son approached high school, she researched schools near Kansas City and decided to move her family to Blue Springs, a growing suburb with 20 schools awarded a National Blue Ribbon by the U.S. Department of Education. There, her son learned to enjoy his education and immerse himself in activities like theater. Seeing the difference that funding made and the difference in resources that a rural school versus a suburban school has was so frustrating, Laub said. All kids deserve to have access to resources. For years, she fought for her son to get what he needed, but now she's bringing her anger to a larger fight, one she believes has vast implications for public schools statewide. Laub is part of a coalition called Parents for Missouri Public Schools that is organizing families against a proposed constitutional amendment that would allow state lawmakers to raise school sales and use taxes in order to repeal the state's income tax. Fueled by parents worried about the future of the kids' schools, the organization is one of many groups labeling Amendment 5 to an affront to public education. The fight over Amendment 5 has largely been framed as a tax debate, with those in favor of the proposal pitching it as a way to drive more businesses to Missouri. But for public school advocates, the central question is what happens to schoolrooms if the state phases out a tax that supplies a major share of general revenue and places it with sales tax under the purview of the state legislature. Amendment 5 could dramatically harm the bottom line of public education funding in a time when public schools cannot take another hit. Molly Fleming, a professional organizer behind Parents for Missouri Public Schools, told The Independent. State funding of public schools came up $138 million short this fiscal year due to the state budget's over-reliance on lottery and gaming taxes, reducing the amount of per-pupil funding by a couple $100. The discrepancy was a disproportionate effect on schools who rely more heavily on state support, which tend to be Missouri's rural districts. The budget lawmakers passed this spring, which has yet to be signed by Governor Mike Keogh, keeps funding flat, incoming $190 million under what the state's formula for determining aid to public schools called for. And officials are predicting lean years ahead as the state reserves dwindle. The cut to public school funding was a very serious thing for me to want to be able to get involved. Sierra Kilpatrick, a mother of 5 in North Kansas City and regional organizer with Parents for Missouri Public Schools, told The Independent. I need to do something, and I don't feel helpless. I can go out and talk about this. Supporters of Amendment 5 argue Missouri should move away from taxing income and toward a system they say would make the state more competitive, attract investments, and let residents keep more of what they earn. They have framed the proposal in a way to force lawmakers to modernize the tax code while giving them flexibility to replace lost revenue. The other states with no income tax have grown at a pace much faster than Missouri. Governor Mike Keogh said in a recent radio interview, we're losing population, they're gaining population, so this isn't sustainable. But opponents say the measure asks voters to trust lawmakers to replace the state's largest revenue source without guaranteeing that public schools will be protected if the math does not work. I'm going to take a short break. A woman at a pro-Amendment 5 town hall in Grandview earlier this month asked if public schools would face additional cuts, saying she worried lawmakers might not prioritize stable education funding if given more control over taxation. Republican State Representative Bishop Davidson of Republic, who sponsored the tax cut amendment, said he thinks public education would benefit from revenues being tied to consumption rather than income. States that rely on consumption taxes rather than income taxes revenue have more stable budgets and more predictable budgets, he said. Davidson's claim is largely true, with research showing that income tax revenues decline faster in a recession than sales taxes. But policy analysts have varying recommendations to fight volatility, advising states to plan ahead with large reserves or diversify its tax portfolios by not leaning too heavily on one tax system. Amendment 5 calls for local governments to cut tax rates to keep revenue neutral, since it assumes more goods and services will be subject to both state and local taxes. It includes a provision barring municipalities from lowering local funding of public schools under these clawbacks, but it does not prescribe any protection at the state level. The Missouri Budget Project, on a left-leaning public policy think tank opposing Amendment 5 estimates the change could cut school budgets by 18%. It really does feel like a tax break for billionaires and millionaires versus safeguarding funding for public schools, Fleming said. There are lots of parents who also are worried about their own bottom line or worried about increased gas taxes or whatever it may be. Fleming has an extensive background in organizing work, including the information of a group called Parents for KC Kids, which advocated for the passage of Kansas City's public schools bond measure last year. Voters widely approved a $474 million bond, the first capital improvement to pass in the city since the 1960s. Around 90% of those involved in Parents for KC Kids had never campaigned before, Fleming said. The group raised just over $11,000, according to Missouri Ethics Commission filings, contributing to a decisive victory through volunteer efforts and word of mouth. The families who got involved in the campaign kept their advocacy work going, helping to lay the foundation for Parents for Missouri Public Schools. When the bond passed, it was like a trigger went off in everyone's head. "Oh my gosh, we can do important things," said Lene Bridewell, a mom in the district. "It's kind of like a hug. Like a bug. We got bit by the bug, and that one gave us momentum and clarity for ability to make change." Catherine Evans, a Kansas City mom and nonprofit consultant, was used to helping a charity organization advocate for themselves, but had not yet gotten involved in school matters apart from the Parent-Teacher Association. She joined the bond fight to help secure better facilities for neighborhood schools. After the win, she hasn't stopped seeing needs. Once we won that campaign, I became more aware that there are a lot of threats, she told The Independent. "We just won a lot of money for our schools so that we can have nicer buildings and facilities, but there are plenty of threats to public education fundamentally. Across the state, parents in Francis Howell School District in St. Charles County took on a similar battle this year. In April, the county voted on a proposed property tax freeze, which would have stalled local revenue that public schools rely on, with 59% of the voters rejecting the measure. The proposal was part of a bill passed by state lawmakers last year that also sought to incentivize sports teams to stay in Missouri. Jamie Martin, who is president of a group called Francis Howell Forward, partnered with Fleming to educate her neighbors on why frozen property tax rates could harm local schools. Because of the property tax fight, I had learned a lot about taxes and how they're divided up, and how they work and how they fund schools, Martin told The Independent. So when I saw Amendment 5 come on the horizon, I was like, oh, that is going to have major impact for public schools. And public schools are something I care a lot about. Earlier this month, Martin led a training for parents in St. Charles to learn about Amendment 5. Her profession as an education researcher has put her in front of countless training sessions, but the energy in this room stood out. These parents are ready not just to hear the information and to complain, but these parents are ready to act. Over the past week, volunteers from Parents from Missouri Public Schools have held regional meetings in community centers, homes, and restaurants. They ask attendees to spread information in a way that fits their schedule, whether it be social media posts, play dates, or more formal campaigning by flyering and making calls. The goal is to educate people in this so that they can go out into their communities and educate more people by word of mouth, Kilpatrick said. Although summer schedules are busy, Evans said, volunteers are finding ways to work advocacy into their schedules, motivated by the hope of helping their kids' education. We are parents of the highest stake. We as parents have the highest stakes, but we also have a lot of agency to make a difference in the outcome because our relationship with each other, she said. We are going to be connected as a parent community because we all care about our kids. The coalition is also working to influence school boards to pass resolutions warning about potential impacts of Amendment 5. In the past weeks, school boards in Lee Summit and Kansas City have adopted such statements. Parents for Missouri Public Schools has not taken a partisan stance, instead focusing on the impact of school funding and parents' personal budgets. We have not affiliated in any way with any party, Evans said. There is a shared interest in protecting public schools, and that spans all kinds of differences. So far, the group has reported one contribution large enough to trigger 48-hour disclosure requirements, a $10,000 contribution from St. Louis-based Missouri Winds Investor Network. Smaller donations will be included in the committee's July 15th report. It is pretty rare that we have an opportunity in Missouri to bring people together across such broad differences to all walks together towards something that we want to protect, Evans said. In this case, it is protecting public schools, protecting everyday Missourians. This article was in the Springfield News-Leader, submitted by Annalise Henshaw from the Missouri Independent submitted yesterday. In the Daily Citizen in Springfield and Greene County, new ordinance targets illegal signs in Springfield. The City Council also passed a measure reinstating sign regulations from the previous Land Development Code. In an effort to crack down on illegal signs in a public right-of-way or on public property, commonly referred to as bandit signs, the City Springfield Council on June 22nd passed an ordinance creating a new enforcement mechanism for city staff to use in addressing violations. In a separate, unrelated move, the City Council also approved a text amendment to the City Code reinstating certain sign regulations, the previous Land Development Code, which was replaced by a new code earlier this year, after the new standards produced outcomes different from the previous regulations, despite the new code being framed as having no change in impact. Both measures passed 7-0 with council members Bruce Adib Yazdi and Derek Lee absent. The ordinance applies to city, county, state, and federal property and right-of-way. The ordinance targeting illegal signs does not change existing regulations on where signs can be placed. Instead, it created a new enforcement mechanism by establishing a prima facie framework, assigning responsibility to the person, business, or organizations referenced on the signage. The only change is to strengthen the city's ability to enforce existing law and add chronic violators more effectively, Deputy City Manager Colin Quigley told council members at the June 8th council meeting, where the bill was taken up for the first reading, after adding that it is already illegal to place signs on public right-of-way. The ordinance, he said, was prompted by a significant increase in illegal signs throughout Springfield. These signs obstruct views, they distract drivers, and detract from the community's appearance, Quigley said. The ordinance also allows the city to address illegal signs placed on any kind of public property or right-of-way, whether owned by city, county, state, or federal government. It's expansive here. It's on any kind of public property, so it's buildings, it's trees that would be considered public property, where these would be illegal, utility poles, right-of-way, Quigley said. Right now, we just have a really city out-of-ways, right-of-ways that would be state right-of-way, federal right-of-way, county right-of-way, so that's anything public. In the context of signs next to the roadway, Quigley said public right-of-way extends 5 feet from the curb under city code. Behind the sidewalk or utility pole is typically where the right-of-way ends, Quigley said. Obviously, at intersections, there's a slight distance that we have to make sure we don't block views of traffic that pull out there. The ordinance defines sign as any advertisement, announcement, direction, or communication provided in whole or in part by the construction, erection, affixing, or placing of a structure on any land or on any other structure, or produced by painting on or posting or placing any printed, lettered, pictured, figured, or colored material on any building or structure or surface. Violators would be subject to the city's general penalty ordinance, which authorizes a fine of up to $1,000 and imprisonment of up to 180 days. Each day that the violation continues is considered a new and separate offense. The penalty would ultimately be determined by municipal court judge based on the evidence provided by the Department of Building Development Services and city prosecutors. While the person, business, or organization referenced on the sign would initially be assumed responsible for the violation, they would be able to contest that assumption in court. The prima facie element of this makes it a little bit easier to at least write a citation, Quigley says. You put it out there, come to court, and explain it. And if they're able to, in front of a judge, explain the situation effectively, then I'm sure the judge is going to take that into consideration. The City Attorney Jordan Paul emphasizes that the city would prioritize education over enforcement, noting that the biggest problem is serial offenders who have been told multiple times that it's not lawful and they don't care. Reinstatement of previous sign codes sets stage for a larger conversion. At the recommendation of both city staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission, the City Council passed another sign-related measure, but for a completely different type of sign, those requiring a permit. Specifically, the council voted to reinstate some of the city's previous sign regulations, which were replaced with a new sign code on April 7th, when the updated Land Development Code went into effect, following the citywide remapping project. While various elements of the wide-ranging code update are intended to revolutionize how Springfield is developed moving forward, the rewritten sign code is not. Rather, it was supposed to have no change on impact from the previous regulation. However, that has not been the case, according to Justin Crichton, Assistant Director of Planning and Development. What we found in an implementation was different, Crichton said at the June 8th meeting. In a handful of places as written, or could reasonably be interpreted as written, it did shift some outcomes. So this amendment request was being made to restore the old baseline. There's no new policy, No tighter restrictions, but it does set the stage for a larger conversation about signs and sign policy in the future. Supporting documents also call for the more robust stakeholder conversation about sign regulation before substantive changes to the sign code can occur. The text amendment approved by council is specific and targeted, Crichton said. The idea is restoration to the chief, so the chief one among them is restoring to the center line method for measuring setbacks for signs. Crichton said there are a few older items that need to be tidied up and put back in place. Standard sign allowances and maintenance provisions and other exemption applicants are already used to. Jack McGee is the government affairs reporter at the Springfield Daily Citizen, and he submitted this article to the Daily Citizen 3 hours ago. Oh, let's go with a little bit of today in history, since this is a big history week. Back in, and this changed on me. We need June. June the 29th. In 1995, here's a fairly recent one for us old folks. In 1995, the U.S. space shuttle docked with Russian space station. There's a very cool picture here. On June 29th of 1995, the American space shuttle formed the largest man-made satellite over the orbit of Earth. This historic moment of cooperation between former rival space programs was also the 11th human space mission in American history. At the time, Daniel Golden, Chief of National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, called it the beginning of a new era of friendship and cooperation between the U.S. and Russia. With millions of viewers watching on television, Atlantis blasted off of NASA's Kennedy Space Center in eastern Florida on June 27, 1995. Just after 6 a.m. on June 29th, Atlantis and its 7 crew members approached Mir as both ships orbited the Earth some 245 miles above Central Asia, near the Russian-Mongolian border. When they spotted the shuttle, the 3 cosmonauts on Mir broadcast Russian folk songs to Atlantis to welcome them. Over the next 2 hours, the shuttle's commander, Robert Hoot Gibson, expertly maneuvered his craft towards the space station. To make the docking, Gibson had to steer the 100-ton shuttle to within 3 inches of Mir at a closing rate of no more than 1 foot every 10 seconds. The docking went perfectly and was completed at 8 a.m., just 2 seconds off the targeted arrival time and using 200 pounds less fuel than it had been anticipated. Combined, Atlanta and the 123-ton Mir formed the largest spacecraft ever in orbit. It was only the second time ships from 2 countries had linked up in space. The first was June of 1975, when American Apollo capsule and a Soviet Soyuz briefly joined in orbit. Once the docking was completed, Gibson and Mir's commander Vladimir Dazurov greeted each other by clasping hands in a victorious celebration of the historic moment. Also on this date, going back a ways, Shakespeare's hometown or home theater, the Globe Theater, burned down. The Globe was built by Shakespeare's acting company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men, in 1599 from the timbers of London's very first permanent theater, the Burbage Theatre, built in 1576. Before James Burbage built his theater, plays and dramatic performances were ad hoc affairs performed on street corners and in the yards of inns. However, the Common Council of London in 1574 started licensing theater pieces performed in inn yards within the city limits. Like other theaters of its time, the Globe was a round wooden structure with a stage at one end and covered balconies for the gentry. The galleries would seat around 2,000 people, with room for another 1,000 groundlings who could stand on the ground around the stage. The Lord Chamberlain's men built Blackfriars Theatre in 1608, but this particular Globe Theatre burned in 1613. In 1776, a very renowned year, South Carolina's Edward Rutledge opposed independence. On June 28th, Edward Rutledge, son of South Carolina's representatives to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia, expressed his reluctance to declare independence from Britain in a letter to the like-minded John Jay of New York. Contrary to the majority of his council colleagues, Rutledge advocated patience with regards to declaring independence. In a letter to Jay, one of New York's representatives who was similarly disinclined to rush a declaration and who was on business in New York during the independence debates, Rutledge worried whether moderates like himself and Jay would effectively oppose a resolution for independence. He further wrote that the Congress sat till 7 o'clock this evening in consequence of a motion by R.H. Lee's resolving ourselves free and independent states. The sensible part of the House opposed to the motion. They saw no wisdom in a declaration of independence, nor in any other purpose to be answered by it. No reason to be assigned for pressing into this measure, but the reason for every madman a shoe of our spirit. Rutledge was born in Charleston. He too returned to Charleston, where he married and began a family in a house across the street from his brother. In revolutionary politics, roiled the colonies. First John, the brother, and then Edward served as South Carolina's representatives in the Continental Congress. Neither Rutledge brother was eager to sever ties with Great Britain, but it fell to Edmund to sign the Declaration of Independence and create the appearance of unanimity to strengthen the Patriots' stand. At age 26, Edward Rutledge was the youngest American to literally risk his neck by signing the document. In 1941, the Germans captured Lvov in Russia. June 29, 1941, the Germans, having already launched their invasion of Soviet territory, invaded and occupied Lvov in eastern Galicia in Ukraine, slaughtering thousands. The Russians followed the scorched earth policy upon being invaded by Germany. That is, they would destroy, burn, flood, dismantle, and remove anything and everything in territory they were forced to give up to the invader upon retreating, thereby leaving Germans little in the way of crop supplies, industrial plants, or equipment. It was a policy that had proved very successful against Napoleon in the previous century. This time, as Germans captured Lvov, the Soviet NKVD, the forerunner of the KGB, secret police, proceeded to murder 3,000 Ukrainian political prisoners. Lvov has had had a long history of being occupied by foreign powers: Sweden, Austria, Russia, Poland, and since 1939, the Soviet Union, which had proved especially repressive. The German invaders were seen as liberators. If for no other reason, they were the enemy of Poland and Russia, two of Lvov's and Ukraine's enemies. But release from the Soviet grip only meant subjection to Nazi terror. Within days, the administrative control of Ukraine was split up between Poland, Romania, and Germany. Some 2.5 million Ukrainians were shipped to Germany as enslaved laborers, and Ukrainian Jews were subjected to the same vicious racial policies as in Russia. Some 600,000 were murdered. Ukrainian nationals also had blood on their hands in this respect, having gone on to the rampage upon the withdrawal of Russian troops by scapegoating Jews for Bolshevism, killing them in the streets. We're in the midst of the World Cup competition right now. Well, in 1950, on June 29th, an American team composed largely of amateurs, defeated its more polished English opponents at the World Cup, held in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. Dubbed the Miracle on Green, the game is considered one of the greatest soccer upsets of all time. The English team, at the time known as the Kings of Football, boasted a record of 23 victories, 4 losses, and 3 draws in the years since World War II ended. Its members were professional footballers cuffed from England's domestic leagues. The Americans, by contrast, had lost their last 7 international matches. Hastily assembled just days before the match against England, the U.S. team included a dishwasher, 2 mailmen, a teacher, and a mill worker. The Belfast Telegram described them as a band of no-hopers drawn from many lands, ostensibly because some of the men were recent immigrants to the United States. By the time the two teams squared off in Belo Horizonte, bookies had given the Brits 3-1 odds to take the World Cup, compared to 500-1 for the Americans. The newly appointed American coach, Bill Jeffrey, apparently agreed with them, telling a reporter, "We have no chance." The game began with the Americans on the defense as the English assailed them with one clear shot on goal after another. The goalkeeper, Frank Borghi, a former minor league catcher who now drove a hearse in St. Louis, managed to tip one. Finally, with less than 10 minutes to go in the first half, U.S. midfielder Walter Barr centered a ball from 25 yards out, and Haitian-born Joe Gatchens scored with a diving header. England lashed back with a battery of shots throughout the second half, but nothing got past Borghi. The no-hopers had defeated the Kings of Football with a single goal. The 300,000 Brazilians in the stands went wild, knowing that a British loss could help their own team fare better in the tournament. Gatchens, who would later return to Haiti and disappear during Francois Duvier's repressive regime, was carried off the field in celebration. Appalled English fans could not fathom that the English had beaten them at their own game. In the United States, meanwhile, the improbable win barely made a ripple. Only one American journalist had traveled to Brazil for the World Cup in the first place, Dent McSkimmy of the St. Louis Dispatch, who paid his own way when his newspaper would not send him. He later said that the American victory was as if Oxford University sent a baseball team over here and beat the Yankees. Why didn't this David and Goliath story make American headlines? For one thing, soccer had never captured the same U.S. fan base as football, baseball, or basketball. Newspapers also had a more alarming matter on cover. June 29th, 4 days before the game, North Korea had crossed the 38th parallel into South Korea, and President Truman had already ordered U.S. forces to intervene. Just 6 years after World War II, this country was once again on the brink of war. After the upset, both teams were quickly eliminated and returned to their own respective sides of the Atlantic. The Brits chastened and the Americans essentially ignored. It would be 16 years before England won its first and only World Cup title. The United States, meanwhile, would not even appear in the tournament again until 1990. On June 12th, 2020, the teams met again at the World Cup in Rustenburg, South Africa, and again, England was the favorite. That match, which was the fifth most watched soccer game in U.S. history, ended in a draw. That's pretty cool. In 1956, Marilyn Monroe married playwright Arthur Miller in a 4-minute civil ceremony in the Winchester County Courthouse in New York State. Norman Mailer famously calls the union a meeting of the great American body and the great American brain. On July 1 of 1956, the couple wed again in a Jewish ceremony in the home of Miller's agent, Kay Brown, near Katona, New York. Eager to fit in with the Miller's family, Monroe studied Judaic text with the family rabbi and converted to Judaism. Monroe and Miller were first introduced in the 1951 by film and theater director Elia Kazan in the Hollywood set of As Young as You Feel. Miller's play Death of a Salesman premiered on Broadway in 1949 and garnered the Pulitzer Prize. Their relationship, however, only really took off years later after Monroe's starring sex symbol roles in The Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, and The 7-Year Itch. Her tumultuous 274-day marriage, and after her 274-day marriage to Joe DiMaggio. It was Miller's second marriage and Monroe's third. On the back of a wedding photograph, Monroe had scrawled, "Hope, hope, hope." Just like her marriage to DiMaggio, the strains began to emerge as early as their honeymoon in London. Monroe discovered notes by Miller expressing doubts about their marriage, an emotional wound from which she never fully recovered. On August 5th, 1962, they divorced on January 24th, 1961, so 5.5 years later, just 1 week before the film The Misfits opened. On August 5th, 1962, Monroe was found dead at the age of 36 in her Los Angeles bungalow, an empty bottle of sleeping pills nearby. Miller did not attend the funeral. But also speaking of the World Cup title, on June 29, 1958, Brazil defeats its host Sweden 5-2 to win its first World Cup. Brazil came into the tournament as a favorite, which did not disappoint, thrilling the world with their spectacular play, which was often referred to as a beautiful game. The star of the tournament was an undersized midfielder named Edson Arantes de Nascimento, known to the world as Pelé. The son of a professional footballer called Dojino was named for the American inventor Thomas Edison, and that was June 29th in 1958. In 1967, Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones sat before the magistrate in Chichester, West Sussex, England, facing charges that stemmed from the infamous raid of Richards' Redlands estate 5 months earlier. Though the raid netted very little in the way of actual drugs, what it did was get a great deal of notoriety for the already notorious Rolling Stones. It was during this raid that the police famously encountered a young Marian Faithfull clad in only a bearskin rug, a fact that the prosecutor in the case seemed to regard as highly relevant to the case in hand. In questioning Richards, Queens Counsel Malcolm Morris tried to imply that Faithfull's nudity was probably the result of inhibition due to cannabis use. Going to the bottom line, the judge, from his defiant attitude on the stands, Richards may not have taken the possibility of conviction seriously. No marijuana was actually found in his possession, but on the evidence presented at trial of a sweet incense smell detected by police, Richards was convicted and sentenced to 1 year in prison. Jagger was also convicted and sentenced to 3 months, but he was immediately released pending appeal. Richards, on the other hand, was sent directly to Wormwood Scrubs prison on this day in 1969. And this being the day that Marilyn Monroe died, blonde bombshell and celebrated actress Jane Mansfield was killed instantly on June 1927 when a car in which she was riding struck the rear of a trailer truck on Route 90 east of New Orleans, Louisiana. Mansfield had been on her way to New Orleans from Biloxi, Mississippi, where she had been performing a stage engagement at a local nightclub. She had a television appearance scheduled the following day. Ronald Harrison, a driver for the Gus Stevens Dinner Club, was driving Mansfield and her lawyer companion, Samuel Brody, along with 3 of Mansfield's children with her ex-husband, Mickey Haggerty, in Stevens' 1966 Buick Electra. On a dark stretch of road, just as the truck was approaching a machine emitting a thick white fog used to spray mosquitoes, which may have obscured Harrison's view, the Electra hit the trailer truck from behind. Mansfield, Harrison, Brody were all killed in the accident. 8-year-old Mickey, 6-year-old Zoltan, and 3-year-old Mariska had apparently been sleeping in the rear seat, and they were injured but survived. In 1972, in Furman versus Georgia, the U.S. Supreme Court, this was 1972, U.S. Supreme Court ruled by a vote of 5-4 that capital punishment is currently employed on the state and federal level is unconstitutional. The majority held that, in violation of the 8th Amendment of Constitution, the death penalty qualified as cruel and unusual punishment, primarily because states employed execution in arbitrary and capricious ways, especially in regards to race. It was the first time that the nation's highest court had ruled against capital punishment. However, because the Supreme Court suggested new legislation that could make death sentences constitutional again, such as the development of standardized guidelines for juries that decide sentences, it was not an outright victory for opponents to the death penalty. In 1976, with 66% of Americans still supporting capital punishment, the Supreme Court acknowledged progress made in jury guidelines and reinstated the death penalty under a model of guided discretion. In 1977, Gary Gilmore, a career criminal who had murdered an elderly couple because they would not lend him their car, was the first person to be executed since the end of the ban. Defiantly facing a firing squad in Utah, Gilmore's last words to his executioners before they shot him through the heart were, "Let's do it." We are currently broadcasting live from the Blind Community Thrift Store, situated at 2713 North Kansas Expressway in Springfield, Missouri. For additional information about our store, please visit our official website at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. To explore more of our video content, including movie reviews with Matt and Meredith, adaptive technology training videos, and other informative material, please visit our YouTube channel by searching for Blind Community Thrift Store. Our organization is dedicated to supporting the blind community through various initiatives, and our online platform serves as valuable resources for community engagement and education. The Blind Community Thrift Store is a 17,000 square foot thrift store located in Springfield, Missouri. It holds the distinctive of being the first retail worldwide to incorporate Navi lens technology, which significantly enhances accessibility to the blind, visually impaired, and non-English speaking individuals. This innovative system enables customers to navigate and shop with minimal assistance, fostering independence and confidence. The store operates as a nonprofit organization dedicated to generating funds that support the provision of adaptive technology and training for the blind and visually impaired community, often at little or no cost. Visitors can learn more about the organization and access its services by visiting the store in person at 2713 North Kansas Expressway, Springfield, Missouri, or by exploring the website at www.blindcommunitythriftstore.com. The website offers comprehensive information about the store's mission, services, and opportunities for community involvement, as well as details about the free store available to residents in the Springfield area. From the Springfield Daily Citizen, this was submitted by Zoe McIntyre just 4 hours ago. Low water crossing where Springfield man drowned requires rescues every single year. Since 2018, emergency crews have responded to 6 vehicles that were swept off a low water crossing in Fairgrove, said the fire chief. A Springfield man died at the crossing in June. A low water crossing in Fairgrove claimed the life of one Springfield man and required 2 separate water rescues in 1 week of June, according to Fairgrove Fire Protection District Chief Randall Hoskins. Emergency crews responded to a call of a vehicle swept off the low water crossing in the 4900 block of State Highway CC around 4 a.m. on June 14th. Hoskins said fast-moving water carried a small commercial truck with 2 occupants about 700 to 100 feet from the roadway. One occupant of the truck was able to escape and dial 911 from a nearby residence, Hoskins said. The other occupant drowned. Family members of Doyantre Bush, 22, confirmed that he was the individual who died. Bush was a musician, father, and graduate of Parkview High School. 1 week later, at the evening of June 21, a woman and her child were swept off the low water crossing and carried about a half a mile downriver, Hoskins said. A family member was able to go downriver and pull them out, but it was a miracle. In light of the recent incidents, Hoskins says that a years-long effort to bring attention to several dangerous low-water crossings in northern Greene County is now finally starting to catch some steam. A fire chief is meeting with state legislators soon to discuss this issue. Speaking of the man who died in the incident in June, Brandy Holland, Bush's mother, described her son as a family man who frequently organized family get-togethers at his aunt's house in Springfield. He recently moved back to Springfield and was working odd jobs with the goal of moving to Chicago to be near his 5-year-old son, Zaire. His biggest goals in life were to become famous and take care of his family. That's all he ever wanted. Holland said Bush created music under the name of Boss Gang Trey and wrote some songs like Letter to Zaire about family members. According to Holland, Bush had a friend from high school who collected and hauled truckloads of grease for money. He decided to accompany the friend on a trip at the last minute and ended up driving the truck on June 14th. Holland said she stated that her son was not familiar with driving a commercial vehicle and had never collected grease before. The family is accepting donations to cover the cost of Bush's funeral through Gorman Scharf Funeral Home. A spokesperson for the Missouri State Highway Patrol said a report on the drowning would be available in the coming weeks. The study will evaluate the safety needs along the route. Hoskins said Ebenezer Fire Protection District Chief Nelson Pruitt has been working with him for years to bring attention to several low-water crossings on Highway CC that become treacherous during flash flood conditions. The entire stretch of CC Highway between 13 and 65 is a problem, Hoskins said. He added that roads in the Fairgrove area are bearing heavier traffic, which has increased the frequency of water rescues. It's becoming more and more frequent, where it used to be kind of a one a year, and we might not have one for a whole year. Now we're starting to see it every single year, and now we've had 2 in a week, basically. The crossing in the 4900 block of State Highway CC is particularly dangerous because of poor sight distance. Hoskins described it as a blind S-curve, where drivers may not be able to see ahead of time while approaching at the speed limit. There have been 6 water rescues at this crossing since 2018, according to Hoskins. As of June 6, over 1,200 people have signed an online petition urging local and state officials to replace the low water crossing with an elevated bridge. The crossing is on a state route and is maintained by Missouri Department of Transportation, MoDOT. Jennifer Williams, communications manager for MoDOT's Southwest District, stated there is currently no funding designated for a project at the site. Funding for such projects is limited, and there is currently no funding source designated for a project at this location, Williams stated in an email to the Daily Citizen. MoDOT has ordered new caution and warning signs to increase visibility at the curved low-water crossing. Williams added that Greene County is working with the Southwest Missouri Council of Governments, SMCOG, to begin a study of the route. Greene County has prioritized the low-water crossings on Route CC for several years, but when evaluated with all the other needs in the 21 counties in the district, it has not elevated to become a high priority. Due to continuing concerns, Greene County recently pursued and received a grant to study safety needs on Route CC. They are currently working with SMCOG to get this study underway. Zoe McIntyre submitted this article to the Springfield News-Leader, to the Springfield Daily Citizen earlier this morning. And from the Springfield Daily Citizen, and this was submitted on the 26th, so on Friday last. Former social worker and husband charged with child abuse and neglect in Webster County. Amanda and Jason Acree of Rogersville are both charged with 8 counts of abuse or child neglect or neglect of a child. That's 1 felony child for each of the 8 children authorities say were in the customer's custody. A Rogersville woman, a former social worker turned foster and adoptive mother, has been charged with multiple counts of abuse or neglect of a child. Amanda Lynn Acree, born in 1986, is charged with 8 counts of Class D felony of abuse or neglect of a child. That's 1 count for each child investigators say are in her and her husband's custody. Her husband, Jason Acree, 44, is facing the same charges. He has been arrested and remains in custody in the Webster County Jail on a $10,000 bond. The charges came after a Webster County deputy and Children's Division worker allegedly found the Acree home in Rogersville in very dirty and messy conditions on June 15th, with animal feces and urine in several of the children's rooms and beds. According to the probable cause statement, Children's Division workers have done several investigations at the Acree home in the past, but the workers had not checked in the back of the house where the children lived prior to the visit on June 15th. A Webster County judge granted a warrant for Amanda Acree's arrest on Wednesday, June 24th. Amanda Acree was not home when the deputy and children's division worker visited the Rogersville resident earlier this week, according to the probable cause statement. Jason Acree was home and told the investigators that Amanda Acree had left 2 weeks ago with some of their children to go to North Carolina to find a new home. According to the statement, Jason Acree allegedly attempted to explain the messy home by telling the investigators the family was in the process of packing and that he intended to hire a moving company to help him and the rest of the family move to North Carolina. 5 children who were at the Rogersville residence on June 15th were taken into Children's Division custody. The publicly available charging documents did not disclose where the 3 remaining children in the Acree custody were located. According to the probable cause statement, the Webster County Sheriff's Office was contacted by the Children's Division worker on June 15th, asking for assistance with an investigation of a dirty house. A deputy contacted the Children's Division worker, who told the deputy that there had been several investigations done at the residence in the past. Once I got to the door of their residence, I was immediately hit by a foul odor of rotting food and smell of cat feces, the deputy wrote, adding that there were a lot of packing boxes cluttered at the door, which made it hard to enter through the front door. Jason showed us the kitchen. I noticed empty food containers and trash scattered all around the counter. I also saw trash covering the floor on the kitchen. The deputy allegedly finds animal feces in the kids' beds. The deputy went on to describe conditions in the laundry room as having full trash bags full of molding trash lying on the floor, along with dirty clothes and towels. The deputy described one of the bedrooms where some of the children slept as having trash on the floor and on the dresser and stains covering the bed. In the probable cause statement, the deputy described finding multiple beds where the children slept with animal feces and urine on them, as well as on the floor. In another bedroom, the deputy said he had to walk over a diaper which was filled with human poop and pee, which was lying in the middle of the floor. The deputy also described the basement as having animal feces and urine all over the floor. The deputy noted in the report that Jason Acree's bedroom was in imminent condition, possibly immaculate condition, compared to the rest of the residence, with no trash or odor found. Amanda Acree seriously injured in 2020. Jason Acree spoke to the News-Leader in 2020 after Amanda Acree had been seriously injured in a one-vehicle accident in Springfield. Then 34, Amanda Acree had suffered a broken wrist and ankle, shattered femur, and broken ribs. Her right leg was amputated. Jason Acree told the reporter in 2020 that Amanda Acree was a licensed social worker and counselor who had worked for the Children's Division for about 6 years. Jason Acree said Amanda Acree opened the now defunct Thrive Family Support Services, a private practice counseling office in Marshfield, in 2017, according to the 2020 News-Leader article. Department of Services documents show the Thrive Family Services had an office in Springfield in 2025. At the time of the crash, Acree had 8 children in their home, then ages 1 through 14. Of those, 1 was Amanda's biological child, 3 were adopted, and 4 were siblings who, at that time, were in foster care. Also at that time, the couple was in the process of taking in another baby. Any identifying information about the children who were in the home when a Children's Division worker and deputy visited earlier this month is redacted in charging documents as well. Jackie Rywell is a reporter for the Springfield Daily Citizen, and she submitted this on June 26th, but it was updated just a couple of hours ago. Now to happenings this month, holidays, etc. And June is almost over. June 29th. It is the Hug Holiday. Hug Holiday arrives every June 29th, inviting us to share warmth and affection with those around us. This special day highlights the profound benefits of physical touch from releasing oxytocin to strengthening social bonds. Embrace a loved one, offer a comforting squeeze to a friend, and join a community to spread joy today. It is also International Fisherman Day. So to those of you who love to fish or love someone who fishes, International Fisherman Day casts its net of appreciation every June 29th, honoring the timeless work of fishermen across the globe. This day recognizes their essential role in providing food and sustaining economies, a tradition dating back to prehistoric times. Discover ways to support sustainable fishing and acknowledging these crucial workers. For International Fisherman Day, businesses and organizations often highlight appreciation programs rather than direct sales. Look for special discounts for commercial fishing on gear and supplies from brands like West Marine and Bass Pro. We have several here in an International Mud Day, International Almond Butter Crunch Day, International Bacon Burnt In Days, National Camera Day. I think I'll check that one out. National Camera Day arrives every June 29th, celebrating the incredible journey of photography from complicated science to an everyday art form. This day encourages everyone to pick up a camera, whether it's a professional DSLR or a smartphone, and capture the world around them. Focus on telling your story, experimenting on new techniques, and sharing your unique perspective through the lens. And National Waffle Iron Day. National Waffle Iron Day celebrates the ingenious kitchen appliance every June 29th. This day honors the device that transforms simple batter into golden, crispy, and fluffy waffles enjoyed by millions. Get ready to plug in your waffle maker, experiment with new recipes, and share your delicious creation with friends and family. National Guy Day. National Guy Day arrives every June 29th, offering a dedicated moment to appreciate the guys who make a difference in our lives. Take time to acknowledge their support, share a laugh, and celebrate their unique contributions. While we wait for official 2027 promotions to drop, history shows that National Guy Day inspires a range of deals on products and experiments often enjoyed by men. Look for special offers from brands like Buffalo Wild Wings, Old Spice, and Best Buy, and Yeti and Drizzly. And if you missed it yesterday, since being a Sunday and we were not here, yesterday was St. Vitus Day, also known as Vidovan, and is observed every June 28th, commemorating the 1389 Battle of Kosovo and honoring Serbian national identity. This day is a profound expression of cultural heritage and religious devotion for Serbs worldwide. Learn about its historical significance, participate in remembrance ceremonies, and explore the traditions that keep the spirit alive. And yesterday was also Paul Bunyan Day. Paul Bunyan Day arrives every June 28th, celebrating one of America's most enduring folklore heroes. Dive into the larger-than-life stories of the mighty lumberjack and his giant blue ox babe, who shaped landscapes with their incredible feats. Explore the rich tradition of American tall tales, share your favorite Bunyan adventures, and discover how this legend continues to inspire creativity and wonder. Paul Bunyan Day is also the same as National Tapioca Day. National Tapioca Day bubbles up every June 28th, inviting us to explore this versatile and often misunderstood carb. Made from the cassava plant, tapioca is most famously known in creamy puddings and chewy boba tea. Take this day to brave a new tapioca dish, revisit a childhood favorite, or share your love for its unique texture with others. A little more serious, yesterday was National Fatherless Children Day, June 28th. National Fatherless Children's Day occurs every fourth Sunday in June, acknowledging the profound impact of fatherlessness on children and families. This day raises awareness about the detrimental consequences that a lack of paternal involvement can have on individuals and communities. Join the conversation, support mentor programs, and advocate for resources. We also have Log Cabin Day on June 28th. Arrives every last Sunday in June, celebrating the simple beauty and enduring legacy of these iconic dwellings. From humble frontier homes to cozy modern retreats, log cabins invoke a sense of history and tranquility. Take a moment to appreciate their unique craftsmanship and explore historic sites or plan your own rustic getaway. I'm going to take a few minutes here and find some articles I didn't have time for before. We've got Andy's Frozen Foods. CEO Andy Kuntz and his team sat down with the Springfield Daily Citizen on June 23rd to discuss his company's request for up to $32 million in Chapter 100 industrial development bonds. He believes there's a public misconception about what the company would be getting. Andrew's Frozen Custard CEO, Andy Kuntz, explained that the property tax abatement that would be considered by Springfield City Council is necessary to keep the frozen treat company headquartered in Springfield. Kuntz and his team sat down with the Springfield Daily Citizen on June 23rd to discuss his company's request for $32 million in Chapter 100 industrial development bonds, which allow companies to develop projects with property tax abatement. I think there's some public perception that the city is giving us a lot of money to build an office space, and the honest answer is that the city is giving us nothing to build an office space, Kuntz said in his office at Andy's current headquarters in downtown Springfield. We are financing it all with our own money or bank money. What we're asking for is some tax abatement on the property. Kuntz said there is a misconception surrounding the idea that bonds are being paid for by the city and the taxpayer to build Andy's new headquarters. In reality, bonds is the word that the state statute uses to describe the process that leads to the property tax abatement. Kuntz says Andy's will be paying all the city's cost, and the company would get tax abatement on the property and on the construction materials for the site. They call it Chapter 100 sometimes. It's industrial revenue bonds, but it's not a bond in the traditional sense, said Robert LaFuente, Director of Real Estate, who was also present for the interview at Andy's HQ. It's just a legal framework that the state requires to set up abatement. While the bond proposal would not hand over $32 million in taxpayer funds to Andy's to construct new headquarters, the property tax abatement would add up to a significant sum, Kuntz said. I don't know what it will be, said the new property. Kuntz said, I mean, property taxes could be $75,000 a year. If we can get 90% of that for 10 years, it could add up. On June 24th, Andy's published a press release that attempted to clarify the company's request for property tax abatement. Notably, the word bond is not found in the press issue. To clarify, Andy's is not asking the city of Springfield for $32 million, the company said in a press release. Instead, Andy's is prepared to make a potential investment of $32 million to build its corporate headquarters in Springfield. We would never ask the taxpayers to write a check to the company. In order to make the project possible, Andy's has applied for Chapter 100 Economic Development Incentive, a financing structure that has been used throughout Missouri for decades to support local business investments and job creation. City Council gives nod to the company to begin the process of bond proposal. On June 22nd, City Council passed a resolution that acts as a green light for the company to come up with the development plan and bond proposal. The affirming vote did not issue any bonds or approve the use of any incentives for the project. Earlier this month, Andy's Frozen Foods requested up to $32 million in bonds from the city to build its headquarters in Springfield and not move the project to another state. Now that the resolution of intent has passed, the company will begin to prepare plans for the project and the issuance of bonds. There will be a notice of public hearing on the bond issuance and a cost-benefit analysis that would be sent to constituents. City Council will then hear and vote on the bond issue. If it passes council, the bonds will close. Kuntz said the first time Andy's discussed tax abatement on the new headquarters project with city officials was around summer of 2025. The company purchased the 10-acre property in 2022 on the northeast corner of East Division Street and North Lecompte Road on the east side of Highway 65 to develop a new headquarters. Updated plans released in the resolution show the project will include more than 43,000 square feet of office space and 9,000 square feet of warehouse space. It will be built in 2 phases, with the first complete in 2028 and the second in 2023. As the plan for the new headquarters came together over the years after purchasing the property, construction and development costs skyrocketed, and the company does not believe it can build its headquarters in Springfield without property tax abatement. The company is outgrowing its downtown Springfield headquarters, where it has been since 2018, and though it has extended the lease at the space through 2018, Kurt said the company wants its own headquarters property in the future. Plans for the new headquarters have gone through drastic cost changes since the conception and purchase of the property about 4 years ago. The timing of it has been evolving as a function of the cost, De La Fuente said. The cost here in the last 3 years has gone up 30%. Furthermore, while there is some discussion surrounding the timeline of tax abatement requested in the resolution, namely 25 years of different levels of tax abatement, Kuntz said Andy's really needs the total sum of the abatement to make the project financially feasible. The company's development plan and bond request will ask for 25 years of tax abatement at various levels, starting with 90% abatement in the first 10 years. In the June 24th press release, the company said that even with the property tax abatement, the city will still receive more in property tax than it is currently collecting at the project site. The property is currently generating about $2,600 a year in property tax. Kuntz said in the June 23 interview, if the company's headquarters are constructed on the property, those tax collections will increase dramatically, and at the conclusion of the abatement period, the property would return to full taxation. While the company has discussed internally and externally a move to a neighboring community like Republic or a city as far away as Kansas City, Kuntz says Springfield is the only municipality from which the company has requested Chapter 100 bonds. The company plans to see this request through with the city of Springfield before it considers asking other municipalities for some sort of tax abatement. The CEO of the frozen meat company said the CEO of the frozen treat company said the public response to the property tax abatement proposal has surprised him. It's been nice to think that, for a company that's been at it for 40 years, it gets a reward in the end. We worked our tails off and created a lot of opportunities for people in our stores, in our office, and paid a lot of sales tax and a lot of property tax every year. And I guess I'm thinking it would be nice just to see the bond proposal come to fruition. We love Springfield, and Springfield has been good to us, Kuntz said. The director of real estate added that the Chapter 100 request for Springfield is comparable to what the company would request of other Missouri cities. We were looking for a deal that we could get comparable in St. Louis, Kansas City, and we're hoping that Springfield could at least come up and meet us to be competitive with those cities. In the press release, the company said it has supported Springfield and has been involved in community through schools, youth organizations, and charitable causes. Beyond creating and retaining jobs, Andes has always believed that being a good neighbor is just as important as being successful business, the company said in the release. We are excited about the opportunity to continue growing in Springfield and remain optimistic as discussions with the city move forward. Springfield has always been Andy's home, and our strong preference is to continue investing in the community that has supported us since 1986. At the same time, Kuntz has said the company has to make some hard decisions for the future of the frozen custard company and what makes the most financial sense for the trajectory of the company. If Springfield doesn't offer a deal for tax abatement, the company will explore its options in other cities. On the flip side, I think as a company, we have to be smart and just make good decisions. And the Kansas City thing is not a threat, Kuntz said. I was born and raised in Kansas City. We own a residence and have there for 20 years. My daughter lives there. We have 15 stores there. Are we going to entirely up and move our entire headquarters to Kansas City? Maybe, maybe not. But we could certainly reduce the impact of what would be built here in Springfield. In fact, we wouldn't build anything. We would probably work out a long-term lease and keep some people here. The CEO of the private-held company in which Kuntz's family is the majority owner said he personally doesn't want to see the company move its headquarters to any other city because Andes is synonymous with Springfield. The company's identity has involved Springfield for almost 40 years. The other cities, those are avenues I really don't want to go down, but we've talked to people. I've made calls from people, and I've had calls from people in Republic. We've talked to our broker in Kansas City, but Springfield is where our heart is at. This article was submitted by Ryan Collins and submitted to the Springfield Daily Citizen. That was on June 24th. And so we don't miss poking around this morning. Black Lives Matter and Pride flags stolen again at the Unitarian Universalist Church. Time to grease the pole. I suspect that it's someone who thinks that we're not doing Christianity right, said Pastor Michelle Scott Huffman. These thefts are misguided on two fronts, she says, one being that it's not a Christian church. The First Unitarian Universalist Church of Springfield for years has displayed a Black Lives Matter and a pride flag along with the American flag to proclaim to passing motorists on Battlefield Road that the church supports those communities. There are a lot of people who come in here because they see those flags, and that makes them think this is a safe place to do, says Reverend Michelle Scott Huffman, the church's pastor since June of 2020. For years, people have been stealing those flags. The blurry videos from the camera at the door show the culprits appear to be, this will shock you, young men. I suspect that is someone who thinks we're not doing Christianity right, Scott Huffman said, but the UU Church isn't Christian, she adds. Most recently, the flags were stolen in the early morning of June 7th. These new flags kept in reserve were hoisted. New flags were hoisted, and at this time, parishioner Bob Eccles greased the flagpole with Crisco oil. And so far so good. If another attempt, I will certainly want to see the video. In 2024, Eccles raised the cleat on the flagpole a few feet to make it more difficult to steal the flags. He has experience with these matters. He was once director of facilities management at Missouri State University. He retired in 2015. Pastor says the hostility seems directed to the pride flag. Scott Huffman does not know if the Black Lives Matter flag is collateral damage. To get to the pride flag, you also have to take the Black Lives Matter flag. The thieves left behind Bible verses from the 1 Corinthians handwritten on white cloth. It looks like it was meant to be a flag, but instead they just left it wrapped around our sign. The verses say in part, neither the sexually immoral or idolaters or adulterers or homosexuals or thieves or the greedy or the habitually drunk or verbally abusers or swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. She says the hostility that's focused on the church involves LGBTQ issues, not Black Lives Matter. Only the thieves can clarify the matter, she said, but that's asking a lot of people who visit in the dark of night to filch flags. Of the 70 to 80 people who attend worship, only a handful would describe themselves as Christians. In other words, Scott Huffman says, it makes no sense to use Christian scripture to condemn a non-Christian church. This is a little misdirected. Scott Huffman is, in fact, a Christian minister. She graduated from Phillips Theological Seminary of Tulsa. Of 70 to 80, she says only a handful would describe themselves as Christian. If you go in our sanctuary, you will see all banners that represents lots of religions. Christianity is one of them, but only one of them. I am an ordained Christian minister, but I'm probably only one of a handful of Christians that are a part of this congregation. The verse left behind is what some call a clobber text. There are 8 of them, she says, as opposed to 2,200 verses that talk about how we would take care of our neighbors who are poor and in need. It makes me wonder, wouldn't it be nice if Christians knew what the most important text, which at times offered, can appear to be contradictory messages? Is this threatening or annoying? Well, when you throw in the greased flagpole, may be funny. The flags were stolen twice in November of 24. After the first theft, Eccles raised the cleat a few feet. You can't get to it unless you get a ladder, or you put somebody on your shoulders. 2 weeks later, that's what happened. The blurry video shows one young male getting on the back of another young male to steal the flags. The flags cost $25 to $30 a piece. I asked Scott Huffman if the thieves were threatening or annoying, or when you throw in the greased flagpole, were they funny? I think it's all of the above, she said. I received an anonymous letter that was left at the stairs of the church. I received an email just within the last few weeks, seemingly from different people. I have received some kind of condemnation of the work I do as a minister here, and certainly a condemnation of the beliefs of this church. I think for folks who are some of the more liberal leaning, I think they're always a little careful about how they operate and talk. I think it's just heightened sense of awareness right now. Eccles has attended the church since 2005, and the flag thefts for him have created a bit of trepidation. When flags are stolen, we are trying to figure out what's the response we should have. There are those who say we ought to lurk behind the bushes and grab them. Instead, Eccles thought of Braver Angels, a bipartisan nonprofit created in 2016 and dedicated to political depolarization. Eccles and another church member set up coffee shops, meetings with people connected with more conservative group. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount put out some pretty solid stuff, he said. Thank you for listening to the Blind Community Thrift Store radio reading service. Tune in every week, Monday through Friday, on the Blind Community Thrift Store's YouTube channel at 10 a.m. for more up-to-date news from the Springfield News-Leader, Springfield Daily Citizen, Springfield Business Journal, and 417 Magazine. Listen after we are live on the Audio Reader Network at www.reader.ku.edu. All broadcasts are played over KSMU subcarrier airwaves at 67 kilohertz on 91.1 from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Contact the Audio Reader Network for information on receiving a pre-programmed radio.